lonely mountain defile, rising more than 4,000 feet into the sky. A cleft on the crest of the Cordilleras. Here, a young man died in absolute obedience to orders, in defense of dignity and love of mother country. On December the 2nd, 1899, General Gregorio del Pilar, the youngest general of the Philippine Revolution, died a hero's death in loyal defense of honor and freedom after a glorious battle among the clouds. Gregorio del Pilar was born in the province of Bulacan, the fifth child of Felipa Sempio and Fernando H. del Pilar. His father was the brother of Marcelo H. del Pilar, who was to become one of the leading Filipino propagandists in Spain. Gregorio learned his first letters with Romualdo Sempio and Monica Estrella in their hometown, later continuing his studies in Manila in the school of Pedro Serrano Lactao. This was followed by further studies in the Ateneo de Manila. During this span of years, young Gregorio stayed with Deodato Arellano, husband of Hilaria del Pilar, his aunt, on the then Candelaria, now Elcano Street in Tondo. Before leaving for Spain, Marcelo H. del Pilar entrusted Deodato Arellano with the difficult task of distributing books and pamphlets on the propaganda movement. Gregorio helped in the distribution of letters and packages, one of his most daring exploits being the insertion of propaganda material into prayer books which had been ripped off the night before. The churchgoers were surprised but pleased, especially when the Spanish priest would intone from the pulpit, "Basahing mabuti yan, yan ay katotohanan, walang iba." Among the youngest of the recruits in the rebel movement was Goyo, who imbibed the spirit of the freedom lovers and was soon an important figure among them. In Cacaron de Sili, Bulacan, on a Sunday afternoon in December 1896, Gregorio del Pilar, together with his brother Julian and some other friends, presented themselves to Maestro Sebio and requested that they be allowed to join his troops. They were readily accepted. Gathered on the summit of a mountain not far from their encampment, the revolutionists kissed their flag and before it renewed their pledge of their willingness to die for their beloved country. The gallant defense of Cacaron de Sili and its fortifications by Maestro Sebio's badly outnumbered men showed the Filipinos' resolve to fight even in the face of overwhelming odds. Not until only 10 men, Del Pilar included, remained to defend the fort against the onrushing Spanish forces did they decide to abandon the fight. Gregorio del Pilar then joined Adriano Gatmaitan's army, where he became a captain. Del Pilar displayed fearless and aggressive leadership when he led a victorious assault on the town of Paumbong. General Emilio Aguinaldo promptly raised the young captain to lieutenant colonel. Del Pilar celebrated his promotion by creating a distinctive flag for his own troops. Flying this banner, the young Del Pilar marched right into the inner circle of the Revolutionary Command. By the summer of 1897, Aguinaldo was in retreat before the forces of Primo de Rivera, and the center of the revolution had shifted from Cavite to Bulacan, where in Biaknabato, Aguinaldo's mountain hideout, a republic was proclaimed on November the 1st, 1897. The Pact of Biaknabato was successfully negotiated by Pedro A. Paterno and signed on December 14th and 15th. In accordance with its terms, certain leaders of the revolution, led by Captain General Aguinaldo, agreed to be exiled to Hong Kong. Don Emilio's faith in Gregorio del Pilar as a soldier was justified by the young general with achievements in battle. Having slipped into Bulacan, del Pilar organized a battalion and began an assault on the town of Bulacan. At the same time, he sent troops under Colonel Pablo Texon to take Nueva Ecija. After intense fighting, the Spanish forces in Bulacan surrendered, and Del Pilar rode at the head of his troops into his own hometown, into the arms of his grateful people. Del Pilar now formed 3 battalions and reorganized his troops. He was soon promoted to the rank of Brigadier General. Despite the courageous stand put up by the Spanish forces in the defense of the city, Manila fell under the combined efforts of Filipino and American troops. Ironically, these same Filipinos who figured in the capture of Manila were not allowed to enter the city, nor sit at the conference table that decided the terms of surrender. It was partly to avoid friction that Aguinaldo was impelled to move the seat of his government to Malolos, Bulacan. It was there that the Revolutionary Congress met and approved the political constitution of the Republic, which was proclaimed January 21st, 1899. The misunderstanding between the Americans and Filipinos was developing into one of open hostility. The Treaty of Paris revealed America's true intentions when it demanded and obtained from Spain the cession of the Philippines. By the night of February the 4th, 1899, a Nebraska volunteer named Robert Grayson fired upon and killed a Filipino officer who was crossing the San Juan Bridge. Following this outrage, Aguinaldo declared war against the United States. The Filipinos knew that they were no match for the well-disciplined and well-equipped troops, but they felt the need to defend their newly established republic. America, the nation that fought with them against Spain, was now the power to contend with. General Gregorio del Pilar was immediately summoned with his brigade to stem the advance of the American forces on their way to Caloocan. Del Pilar was assigned to maintain their ground for as long as human courage and physical endurance could withstand the withering attacks of the superior American army. In spite of overwhelming odds, the Filipinos made an orderly retreat to a well-planned position. They suffered great losses, yet they fought back step by step, so that the pursuing Americans had to pay dearly for every bit of ground they gained. Aguinaldo was forced to retreat before the overwhelming American offensive, which was now designed to capture the head of the Republic to end all organized Filipino resistance. Waited to protect his retreat. Don Emilio and his troops ran northward through the province of Pangasinan La Union, and Ilocos Sur, till they reached the peak to Paso de Tirad, 4,500 feet up a steep slope. When Aguinaldo and his party left for Cervantes, word having come that the pursuing Americans were already in Candon, Del Pilar headed the escort and spent the night in Cervantes. In the morning, he alerted his soldiers for the return to Tirad. The Americans took the town of Concepcion below the pass, and at dawn the next day, climbed the approaches to Tirad. Richard Henry Little, American war correspondent, recounts the battle.
It was a great fight that awaited us on the trail of lonely Tirad Pass on that Saturday morning of December 2nd. It brought glory to Major March's battalion of the 33rd Volunteer Infantry, who were the victors. It brought no discredit to the little band of 60 Filipinos who fought and died there. 60 was the number that at Aguinaldo's orders had come down into the pass that morning to arrest the onward march of the Americans. We saw him cheering his men in the fight. One man from our company crawled up close under the side of the cliff where he had built his first entrenchment. We heard his voice continually during the fight, urging his men to greater effort, scolding them, praising them, cursing them. One moment, reminding them of their love of their native land, and the next instant threatening to kill them himself if they did not stand firm. Driven eventually from the first entrenchment, Del Pilar fell back slowly to the second, in full sight of our sharpshooters, under heavy fire. Not until every man around him in the second entrenchment was down did he ride slowly up the winding trail. We saw an American squirm to the top of a rock and take deliberate aim. We held our breath, not knowing whether to pray that the sharpshooter would shoot straight or miss. Then came the spiteful crack of the crag, and the man on horseback rolled to the ground. When the troops charging up the mountainside reached him, the boy general of the Filipinos was dead. As we went up the trail, we passed dead Filipino soldiers. 7 were all that went back over the pass that night to tell Aguinaldo that they had tried and failed. 53 of them were either killed or wounded, and among them was found the body of young General Gregorio del Pilar. The body was almost stripped of clothing. There were no marks of rank on the blood-soaked coat. This was the end of Gregorio del Pilar. In his diary, Del Pilar had written under the date of December 2nd, the day he was killed.
General Aguinaldo has given me the pick of all the men that can be spared and ordered me to defend the pass. I realize what a terrible task is given me, and yet I feel that this is the most glorious moment of my life. I am surrounded by great odds that will surely overpower me and my gallant men, but I rejoice in the thought that I die fighting for my beloved country.
Today, Tirad Pass stands alone, desolate, brushed by clouds, a monument. Hallowed ground where a soldier, in desperate defense of his leader and his country, offered his life without flinching under the demands of duty and patriotism. This is Tirad Pass, the setting of the epic Battle of the Clouds, the everlasting monument to Filipino courage, unequaled valor, and the purest form of patriotism.